I'm your host, Grayson Brulte. Welcome to another episode of SAE Tomorrow Today, a show about emerging technology and trends in mobility with leaders and innovators to make it all happen. On today's episode, we're absolutely honored to be joined by Dean Case, Membership Director, SAE Southern California Section. On today's episode, Dean brings his decades of experience to a conversation about the future of the industry and how SoCal SAE advances community and knowledge. We hope you enjoy this episode. Dean, welcome to the podcast.
Hi, glad to be here.
It's great to have you here, sir. You have 45 years experience in automotive, with the first 5 years being with SAE, so thank you for your commitment to this wonderful organization. Let's fast forward to the 40-year mark. How did you get started as a professional in the automotive industry?
Well, I think like a lot of kids, I knew I wanted to work in the automotive world, and so it seemed like the best way to do that was get an engineering degree, so I went to Cal Poly San Luis Obispo. And I don't know if my knowledge of SAE before I got to Cal Poly was anything beyond the three letters on an oil can where it said SAE 10W40. But I showed up and freshman orientation week, there was a full-blown Toyota Class 7S truck that was racing the Baja 1000. Cal Poly San Luis used to race professionally in the Baja 1000, Mint 400, and other races, and also in SAE Baja. So I learned about that freshman orientation week, and kind of the rest is history. I've been with SAE now since September of 81 as a volunteer.
That's incredible. So you pack your bag. Did you pack your bags and head down to Baja to see what all the excitement was about? Is that how the journey accelerated?
Yeah, I mean, November of 81, we went down there and raced. We did not have a successful race. We ended up rolling the truck, recovered from that, and then blew the engine. But it was certainly an experience. Then we ended up racing the Mint 400. Actually, it was before I arrived, they had competed in the SCORE World Championships at Riverside Raceway, which was a short course. And Roger Mears drove the truck, brother of Rick Mears, four-time Indy 500 winner, and they won their class. A student-built truck beat factory-prepared efforts. So I came in right after that, and we continued with the truck program for a couple of years, but it just got too expensive, and we finally had to shut that down and focus on SAE Baja. And then years later, after I graduated, the school ended up starting a Formula SAE program.
What role did you play in the Baja races? Were you the engineer? Were you the driver, the strategist? What role did you play?
Just a crew member. When we were going to the professional off-road races, I was just a first and second year student as a crew member. Our drivers, you had to earn enough, you had to do enough hours in the building the truck before you were allowed to drive the truck. But our most notable, besides hiring Roger Mears right before I came, was an engineer named Rick Sturkow, who ended up becoming a NASA astronaut. So we got there's some amazing success stories out of that Cal Poly SLO team from that era.
Do you think the common denominator that connected these individuals from different walks of life that went on to have massive success in life was engineering?
Engineering, but also I think, so much success is because of these SAE projects where, I explain to people that, it's not just the engineering they learned, it's they developed a project that they delivered on time, on budget as a team. And that's what Formula SAE and Baja SAE create.
Yes, you're right, because if you don't have the on-budget work as a team, when you go into, I'll say the dirty word, corporate world, you're in doo-doo land if you don't have those skills.
Yeah, no, it doesn't work. And, motorsports is very harsh in terms of timelines. The event's going to take place whether you're ready or not. So you cannot alter the timeline. In corporate life, you can have delays. Some you are unfortunate, some are, smart. It's like, hey, we're not ready, we'll delay this project. In motorsports, the green flag's going to drop whether you're ready or not. Budgets are a little bit negotiable from the standpoint of, okay, we need to spend more, so we need to raise more. So, budget, your initial budget may not be your final budget, but still you had to contain it. It's not unlimited resources.
Because reading your bio prepping for this, there was a common denominator that it seems like motorsports runs deep in your blood, and you had to stop at the communication officer for Mazda Motorsports. How did you end up at Mazda?
Well, actually, that was a return to Mazda. So right out of college, I started at Mazda R&D. And so I was there. Timing was amazing. I got to work on the tail end of the original Miata program. And then after I was there, as the kids would say, 6-7 years at Mazda, I moved on, went to Ford Motor Company in Dearborn, did electric vehicle engineering in the 90s, and then finally kind of weaseled my way into motorsports at Ford Racing. We did not care for Michigan winters, shall we say. Came back to California, 98, went to work for Nissan, did electric vehicle engineering there. And then I did my career shift from engineering to communications at Nissan. And it was after Nissan departed the state in '06, I went freelance and I ended up being reunited with Mazda. But now, I'd been at Mazda, began my career as an engineer. Now I came back as a consultant doing communications for their racing. So a lot of things tie together. And, one of my messages to students always is don't burn bridges. When you depart a company, go out on the best possible terms because you might be invited back years or even decades later.
And you never know if that individual might go to another company and they might call you, and you never know what's happened to you. You have to maintain that friendship. But you said a very magical word there, the Miata. I remember when the Mazda Miata came, that thing was a breakthrough, radical design. It was a beautiful looking car. I don't remember sales numbers, but I remember you would see something like, wow, okay, that thing was beautiful. What's the backstory of that beautiful vehicle?
The backstory, the catalyst, he hates being called the father of the Miata, but the catalyst is a guy named Bob Hall, who was a former automotive journalist he was fluent in Japanese, and he used to, anytime you go on a press event to Mazda, he would tease Kenichi Yamamoto that the RX-7 was great, but they needed a smaller, lighter weight, less expensive sports car. And finally, Mr. Yamamoto asked Bob, why don't you come to work for Mazda and develop your car? So he was recruited by Mazda to help set product planning in Irvine, California. And one of the first projects they did was this little two-seat sports car. And, Bob Hall was the real genius behind it, but a lot of other people, Mark Jordan, Wu Hong Chin, Mr. Hayashi, Norman Garrett, who's the guy who hired me at Mazda, all had the passion for small, lightweight sports cars that, conventional wisdom in the 80s says there's no market for those, but it's like, no, there was no market for an unreliable British or Italian one with poor dealer support. But if you could come up with a proper sports car that had great reliability and was affordable. And so it was a massive, massive hit when it launched.
When you made the reference to the other manufacturers, you forgot bad wiring. Remember how bad?
Yeah, Lucas, the Prince of Darkness,
And then obviously, then you had the RX-7, you had the RX-8. But on the Miata, what was it? You said at the tail end of the program you were there. What caused the program to be sunset? Was it just sales? Was it shifting consumer taste, or what caused it?
I mean, the Miata was launched in '89. Yeah, it was '89 at Chicago Auto Show, and sales were through the roof. And now it's on its fourth generation. And I give credit to the current Miata engineers. When the first one was designed, there was a blank sheet of paper, and no one told them what was right or wrong. It's very difficult when you're developing a sports car. The second generation, if you listen to your customers too much, you keep adding things. And it shifts from becoming a sports car into a GT car because you've added weight and complexity. And so, the current Miata doesn't sell probably in the same numbers as it once does, but it still has a very loyal following.
It's interesting because I had no idea, because I don't see them anymore. Nobody really talks about it. But you mentioned blank sheet of paper, and so Irvine, and if you go into Carson, that whole South Bay area of Southern California, there's a lot of R&D Skunk Works labs there. How did that evolve into the Skunk Works land? So right now, Ford very publicly has a Skunk Works there. Mercedes has a Skunk Works there. How did that South Bay evolve to Skunk Works land?
Well, I think a lot of you go back, a lot of the aerospace industry and a lot of the hot rodding. I mean, all the original hot rodders came out of Southern California, and so there's just a lot of cross-pollination, if you will, between aerospace and ground transportation. And also you look at it in the South Bay is where Honda, Toyota, and Nissan all set up their U.S. headquarters, all within a couple of miles of one another. We used to joke that when you worked at Nissan, when you went out to lunch, you always had to look around the tables next to you to see what badges were there, because you couldn't really have a work conversation because there might be Honda or Toyota people at the next table. But all of that, and that is in the South Bay because there was already a very large Japanese-American population in Gardena, Torrance. And so if you were the Japanese executive sent to set up an office in Southern California, you needed to be near the port where the cars were coming in. And if you spoke English, that's fine. But if your family did not, you'd like to be in an area where there was already a lot of a Japanese population. And so, even today, if you want the best Japanese food anywhere in California, it's in Gardena and Torrance, which is right where Honda, Nissan, Toyota all set up their operations. But you've got other things around, the studio. California is considered a trend leader, so you've got, design studios here, right and left. Honda has one. Toyota's is Calty down in Newport Beach. Mercedes-Benz is the one that started out as a Chrysler studio, I believe, in Carlsbad. And then when it was Daimler Chrysler after that divorce or split, Mercedes took over that studio in Carlsbad. But then there's also, General Motors has theirs up in Pasadena. I'm not quite sure on the Ford one if it's still in Irvine or if they've moved up to Long Beach where they've got the electric vehicle office. So just a lot of activity in Southern California in general, the South Bay in particular, but it extends, down to Orange County and elsewhere.
Then you have Rivian down in Orange County as well.
Oh, yeah. You got Rivian down in Irvine. You've got Karma down there. You've got Mazda down there. You've got Hyundai and Kia down there. And, you've got Hatchie, which is Hyundai Kia Technical Center, in locations up in the high desert where they have a test track and they've got an office in Chino. So, you want to have a car with decent mileage or range in Southern California to get around all these locations.
If you look at it, let's just from a map perspective, let's just say Los Angeles, Pasadena area to San Diego. It's quite a distance, and let's factor in the most famous thing, traffic. There's a lot of traffic, a lot of distance to cover in between all of those offices. How does the SAE SoCal chapter interact with all these wonderful engineers and these individuals, since some of them are spread apart, not necessarily geographically, but traffic-wise, it could be quite a distance.
No, absolutely. I mean, and when COVID hit, we ended up shifting to doing webinars. And now since we're back doing live, the bulk of the members are in LA County and Orange County. And so the bulk of our meetings, we found this amazing home, the Lions Automobile Museum in Rancho Dominguez, which is kind of North Long Beach. It's kind of an unincorporated area of LA County. And it's this amazing car collection of 160 cars, but also fantastic meeting space that can accommodate up to 600 people with full audio, visual, and a catering kitchen. So that's where we hold our big student workshop in the fall now as our permanent home. And we do our regular section meetings there. But we are recording and posting to our YouTube page. Now we're shifting back to doing live streaming so that the people who don't want to fight LA traffic can still benefit from it. And, we're looking at doing some other things, but the nature of SAE and our counterparts at SWE, SHIP, NSBE, and all those is it all is a function of volunteers. And, if we can get more volunteers in Orange County and the Inland Empire and, some of the parts, we could do more activities there. So what we focus on now is generally once a month have a section meeting, usually on a Tuesday or Wednesday night at Lions. And we're trying to line up more industrial tours, which are typically on a Saturday, because that way, if someone wants to bring their kid, the tours are sometimes a lot more fun to bring, a +1 to, compared to the more technical section meetings.
Because if you look at it just going back to geography again, you have large industrial parks in Fountain Valley, obviously the Inland Empire, and you have a lot of interesting developments. A lot of electrification work for heavy-duty trucks has been done in Ontario. You have the logistics at the airport. You have the automation in the warehouses. When you take these individuals on these industrial tours, is it just traditional automotive, or you're going into the whole logistical stuff, since you have such a wealth of things to visit in the area?
Well, right now we're talking to we're hoping to go visit the Karma assembly plant. We're hoping to go visit Hatchie's test track up in the desert. We're hoping to talk to Singer Vehicle Design, Robinson Helicopters. So, anytime we get a volunteer, sometimes they ask, well, where can I set up a tour? And do you think this would be of interest? And I said, we have this, I believe we're the second largest section in the country. I go, if you think the place is of interest, I can almost guarantee you there's going to be at least 50 or 100 other people who share that vision. We don't have to worry about, we're a professional organization. We don't have to attract a huge audience. We just want to attract the right audience of people who are really interested in the topic. And so everything's fair game. We've done some funny tours. The funniest thing going through our archives I found a thing that this is 50 years ago before I was involved. The section chartered a plane to go to a test track in Arizona. It was like $85 to go on this tour, included lunch, but I'm not sure what airport they flew out of, but they flew to Arizona for a tour of a test track. I don't think we're going to get that ambitious. That might be a little too expensive as well, but we've got no shortage of places to go visit. And we've also got all these amazing museums besides Lions. There's the Western Museum of Flight, and there's motorcycle collections and a lot of cool places that we've been lucky to access a lot of private collections. We did a student event years ago at Vic Edelbrock's private car collection, not open to the public, but Vic, a huge presence in the SEMA world. We said, hey, could we bring some students there? And he goes, yeah, sure. And, Vic Edelbrock Jr. passed away, and, that collection is no longer accessible. But so, it's great to be involved with a group like SAE where it kind of gives you the excuse as a cold call anybody you want. Say, hey, can we come and visit your facility? And most people like to show off what their cool stuff to a knowledgeable crowd. We're not a car club. We're a professional organization that, I always tell people, don't do this as a favor to me. Do it for your own selfish interest. That these are your future customers or your future employees. That there's value in engaging with a group like SAE.
There's massive value, and then you think about the spark that can go off in that young individual's head when they see these vehicles. There's a friend of mine in Los Angeles has a private car collection. He manages cars for individuals, and he calls me up and he said, you got to see so-and-so drop their cars off. I said, okay, yeah, fine. And I wasn't into racing. And it's like, oh, I'm managing Lewis Hamilton's cars. You got to come see the collection that I'm managing for him. It's like, so a buddy of mine's a big F1 guy. He's like, what? Insert your favorite 4-letter words here. And so I brought him with me. And I got a lunch out of it, and he was the happiest camper, and he still talks about it to this day. But you have access to so much incredible stuff there, and to have access, you need volunteers. How are the individuals that want to volunteer finding you? How are they getting engaged? Because there's a wealth of access in Southern California. You just have to be able to make that phone call to unlock it.
That's actually been my biggest contribution to this section over the last few years is recruiting a great board. And we've got some amazing people. Dr. Bachman from Cal State LA, fabulous, one of the best faculty advisors in the country, in my opinion. He's our section chair. John Steiner, who is a Cal State Long Beach success story, runs his own company, Mechanica Scientific, doing forensic. He's an SAE professional education instructor. He's our communications director. Ben Highfill, who was a Chico State grad, I met him. I hosted some students when I was working for SRO Motorsports up at Sonoma Raceway, and Ben showed up and got talking to him, and very impressive student. I said, hey, if you end up working in Southern California, we'd love to have you on the board. He ended up getting hired by Haas Automation. He's now our vice chair for student activities. So a lot of it is just maintaining the connections, but trying to get a lot of the people who benefited as a student in Formula Baja to kind of get back involved on the professional level. But, here again, we just post like, look, can anyone help? And right now we're recruiting what we call subject matter experts for the section. And we're asking them to do one of two things, either help mentor some of the student groups. And, Southern California, because our section covers from San Diego to San Luis Obispo, we now have 20 collegiate groups. Not all of them are at chapter status. Some of them are just clubs and build a Formula Baja car. We're trying to encourage most of them to step up to become official SAE student chapters. But 20 universities are involved with SAE in Southern California alone. And so we need a lot of volunteers to help support that. But so we're asking, hey, if you work for a tire company, I got an engineer from Toyo Tires. He's going to help be a mentor, have students have tire questions. We're asking others to help set up one meeting or one tour per year. That, old school, way back, it's like we had a vice chair for meetings and tours, and they were expected to set up 10 meetings a year. That's too much work for one volunteer. And so now we recruited Vanessa Belk. She's our now vice chair for events, meetings, and tours, and she's going to be kind of the ringmaster, getting all these people to help set up regular meetings on a regular pace. So,
and another thing you have really cool in SoCal JPL, the Jet Propulsion Laboratory, and there's a lot of cool engineering there. What does it look like in terms of, let's say I'm a chapter member for SAE SoCal. What does it look in terms of events, tours, activities? What can I look forward to and put on my calendar? Oh, I can't wait for this day to come. I can't wait for this day to come. What does it look like?
Well, I think one of our two biggest signature events are student focused. We do a fall workshop at Lions, and then we're getting ready for March 7th. We're going to do our 5th annual SAE Student Showcase at the SEMA Garage. That's with we teamed up with SEMA's ETTN, the Emerging Technology and Trends Network. SEMA doesn't like the word committee. They like networks and councils. So they've got a couple of these great ones. And this ETTN is stunning. And so 5 years ago, we came up with this idea that a lot of the student groups were struggling. They would spend all year working on the car, go to competition, and sometimes, sadly, fail tech inspection. And so we thought, we need to help them be better prepared. And so we wanted to do kind of a spring event to let them review their car with professionals. And as soon as we announced we were doing that, companies came out of the woodwork and said, can we come and hire? It's like, yeah, absolutely. And so now it's become a big career fair. This last March, we had 425 students from 30 universities. We had kids driving in from Arizona and Nevada and Northern California. We had 13 hiring companies there. And a lot of them are these small SEMA member companies who their entire engineering staff might be 2 or 3 people. And so they don't have the bandwidth to go visit 20 or 30 schools. But if we can curate this amazing event with the best students, the ones who are really deeply passionate about automotive, including aerospace, it's a win-win. The students get access to companies who never would have visited their campus, and the companies are meeting a wider variety of students than they ever would have on their own. So that's our 2 big signature events, the fall workshop and the spring showcase for students. And then we're trying to get up to a regular once a month meeting. And then tours will be just kind of more sporadic. So a lot of it is they need to tap into the saesocal.org website, and they can look. We have a YouTube channel that we've got over 50 videos of things we've done. We're now capturing all this because a lot of times, we have this amazing meeting, but we didn't record it. And this goes back decades. It's stunning, some of the speakers we've had. We had Dan Gurney as a speaker. Dan Gurney was an SAE member for over 30 years. Not a degreed engineer, but very much an engineer. Dan Gurney, just one of the true innovators in motorsports and a real tech geek. And he hosted multiple tours of his shop over the years, but we had him as a guest speaker. And it was Eric Barr, one of our board members at the time, basically helped curate it. They went through Dan's hallway and took down like 20 photos of significant vehicles and just put together a slideshow. And every time a photo come up, Dan would tell a story. And so it was just amazing stuff. So, we're hoping to also bring in, some of these amazing future talents that I think that you're going to see that some of the times the speakers we get are at a relatively early point in their career, and they're going to go on to do even more amazing things later on.
Isn't storytelling grand when you get these individuals to open up, because the inspiration for these younger students or younger individuals learn from these great stories?
One of my favorites I was a big motorcycle geek as a kid, and we got Malcolm Smith as a speaker. And Malcolm Smith may not be a household name unless you're into dirt bikes, and then he's a big, big name. Baja 1000 winner, International 6-Day Enduro, all these things he did. Malcolm Smith was so cool. That's who Steve McQueen aspired to be, if you watch the movie On Any Sunday. But we got Malcolm to come and tell stories about the early development of Husqvarna motorcycles. And, it's just some amazing stuff like that. So, a lot of what we got in the future is not yet defined. It'll be dependent on what volunteers want to step up and help do.
Do you feel that's one of the greatest advantages to joining the SoCal chapter is access to these individuals to learn from them and to hear from their experience, especially a younger person that's aspiring to have a career in the automotive industry?
Yeah, not just our section, any section. When I joined, I remember our section chair at the time I got involved when I graduated from Cal Poly was Elliot Green, who, I'm not sure if it was either before or after that, he became the SAE International president, but his day job, he was the vice president of engineering for the Lockheed Skunk Works. And it's like, that was amazing to me. It's like, I'm not an airplane guy, but I knew what the Skunk Works was. And, that was legendary. And Elliot treated everyone on the board like an equal because we were all volunteers. And that's what I think a lot of people don't understand, that if you're in a large corporation, you don't have access to senior level executives very often. If you get involved with a professional organization like SAE or our counterparts at SWE, SHIP, NSBE, and those, you meet people way above your pay grade. And Elliot was very inspirational. The fact that, if they assigned me to be the vice chair for student activities or asked if I'd do it, I go, yeah, sure. And after a couple of meetings, what are our challenges? I kind of laid out some of the issues we had. Some of them were logistics, LA traffic, students can't get to meetings. And Elliot was just like, okay, how are we going to solve it? And what do you need? And it's like, wow, this is really cool. And so that's why I tell students, get involved. SAE, your involvement should not stop when you're completed your Formula Baja project at the competition. You need to transition to the professional, and it's the perfect way to open any door you'd want. You're not cold calling like, hey, are you hiring? It's like, hey, I'm calling on behalf of an educational professional organization. We're really interested in what you're doing. Will you give a presentation, or can we come visit your shop? Not everyone says yes, but it's stunning how many people say yes.
And that's magic at the end of the day. There's no other way to describe it. It's pure magic.
Yeah, it really is.
And then if you take it one step forward, it could potentially lead to a mentorship or to eventual job, and you can lean on somebody and learn from their experience.
Absolutely. I mean, here's the funny one. I talk to students about, you think you have no connections, but you do. And the funniest one, how I ended up getting my Ford job, was through SAE, but also connected back to my dad's hobby 30 years prior. So I went to an SAE conference probably in like 89 or 90. And there was a session on alternative fuels. This predates, all the EV mandates and things. And the speaker there was Dr. Roberta Nichols, who was the head of alternative fuels for Ford Motor Company. And she talked about how she got her start in alt fuels by mixing nitromethane for the drag boat she used to race in Marine Stadium in Long Beach. And, the joke with racers is the older I get, the faster I was. The person at the bar who says he was a Porsche driving champion actually just took an hour and a half class at the Porsche driving experience. He didn't actually race. And so my dad was a LA City firefighter, but he had raced boats as a hobby with some friends. And I don't think he ever owned the race boat. He just helped work on it and, was involved. We had ski boats as a kid. But anyway, I asked my dad if he had ever heard of this person who claimed that she was racing at Marine Stadium. And my dad was like, oh, yeah, Witch on a Broom. And I go, what? He goes, don't you remember the name of her boat was Witch on a Broom? And it's like, I have no recollection of this. And my dad finally figured out that he got out of boat racing about the time I was born, and I probably wouldn't remember her. So a year or two later, I see her at another SAE conference, and I introduced myself not as Dean Case, but I'm Donald Case's son. I was 30 years old at the time. And she goes, yes, you are. Because I looked just like my dad did at age 30. I had been rejected by Ford HR multiple times. Dr. Nichols got my resume to someone who could hire me. That's how I got my interview at Ford. The fact that my dad had a common hobby with someone 3,000 miles away. So you tell people, it's like, you go to these events, you get involved, and you meet people that will help you. And some of them are just I've got other surprising stories like that. We can go full in depth on this, but, it's helped making connections, and some of them pay back years or even decades later. One of the students I mentored at Cal State LA when I was at Nissan 25 years ago just joined Motivo a couple months ago. We kept in touch on LinkedIn. We'd see each other at events periodically. And he saw, hey, Motivo is hiring a senior project manager. Do you think I should apply? I go, absolutely, and list me as a reference. But, if we hadn't met 25 years ago when he was a student and I was the vice chair for student activities and involved with Nissan, it wouldn't have happened.
And that goes to the value of keeping long-term relationships and staying on the long-term thing. When you looked at 3,000 miles, it occurred to me that you did a SEMA cross-country road trip. I know it's not 3,000, but everybody says it's 3,000 miles. It's 2,900 something, but I digress on that point. What was that experience like?
Actually, it turned out to be 7,300 miles the route we did. So my wife went with me. I'm part of the yeah, 7,300 miles, almost exactly. Started in Carlsbad, California, and made 15 presentations in 24 days. And so I'm part of the SAE Industrial Lecture Program. And so I had several of these invitations sitting, including Yale and RIT and a couple of East Coast schools. And it's kind of like, I love doing the student presentations, but it's kind of painful in terms of travel. It's like, it's going to take 3 days of my time to give an hour talk and maybe an hour Q&A. And so if I could string them together, this would be kind of fun. And my wife actually was very much in favor of it. And so we did a road trip and visited 13 presentations, 13 schools, 15 presentations. I did one for the Indiana SAE section at PRI headquarters, and then one on the Future Tech stage at the SEMA show in November. That was the concluding stop. But it was a blast. I mean, it was tiring, I'll tell you, but it was fun.
It's incredible. So you do 15 events in 24 days. The first thing that goes through my mind is when Charles Lindbergh did the Flight of St. Louis tour to help build the public adoption after that flight when he ran around the country with all those stops. What were some of, if you want to say, the major highlights, or did you see anybody where a light bulb went off? You said, you know what I said could have went on and changed that person's life. Do you have any of those really feel good moments that you had on that tour?
Yeah, there's a lot. I mean, the consistency is the student passion for automotive and aerospace is universal, and it was the same at virtually every school. The resources they have and the faculty support varies tremendously. And, you go to some schools, I mean, one that I was not expecting, University of New Mexico, man, what a shop. I mean, it's a school I wasn't that familiar with. I'd seen them at competition, very, very competent school and everything. But they weren't one of the big names like UT Arlington or Cornell or the Cal Polys or some of those. So it was a bit of a surprise. They've got huge administrative support and local community support. They have a dedicated shop just for the Formula SAE team at University of New Mexico. I'd never seen a shop that nice for a Formula team, bar none. But then just the huge range. Ohio State, they have a massive shop, but it's for all of their various programs. It's not just they have Formula and Baja, and they've got motorcycle projects and a solar car and everything. But they have 13,000 engineering students at Ohio State. Contrast that, then I went to Smith College, which in Northampton, Massachusetts, which is 125 students in their engineering program. Literally, I think one of the smallest engineering programs you could find, but amazingly high quality. And for the first time ever, I think we're going to have an SAE student chapter at Smith College. And a lot of people are not familiar. It's like, I've never heard of it. It's like, well, you haven't heard of it because it's a liberal arts, all women's college that's been around for over 150 years. They just started an engineering program 25 years ago. And it's a fabulous program. But it was so small, there wasn't a breakthrough point of where there's enough students who wanted to start a student chapter. But I stopped and spoke there on this tour. And afterwards, some students reached out, we'd like to start a chapter. It's like, great. And I already talked to Zach Pace that, we'll get some support there because they might not be able to hit the target of 15 students, but as a percentage, they'll probably have more students involved in Ohio State of their 13,000. So a lot of really interesting things like that. And, I would encourage companies, to help better support the local schools near them. And that's what we're working, teaming up with some of these SEMA companies who are not as familiar necessarily with SAE. A lot of the SEMA member companies, look, you can get involved, and this is a pipeline for talent. It's a pipeline for your future customers, both on a B2C or B2B. You want to support these kids because they're the future of the industry. And they have the passion. They just don't necessarily think they have the connections. And my job is to kind of cover how you develop those connections.
And I'll give a nod to your Rhino Records thing here. A&R, you never know what you're going to discover. You just got to look. And Dean, this has been a fascinatingly insightful conversation. As we look to wrap this up, what would you like our listeners to take away with them today?
Same thing I tell those students, work hard, be nice, and volunteer. Those are the three critical things that, you can do whatever you want if you just I love blending different topics and things, I promoted shelter animal adoptions on Mazda race cars for several years. They don't seem to have a connection, but, there's a subset of people who like racing, and there's a bigger subset of people who like dogs and cats. And we were able to help, raise money and awareness and get publicity for our race drivers and race teams. So, don't be afraid to innovate and look for great partners. And, Southern California, we're teaming up with our amazing friends at SEMA. We team up with SWE, SHIP, NESB, and other groups. That there's a lot of strength in numbers there if you can collaborate.
There is, and I'll tack on a Dean's thing, and I'll add a word that's very important. Be kind. Always be kind. Because when you're kind, you maintain relationships. Today is tomorrow. Tomorrow's today. The future is SAE SoCal. Dean, thank you so much for coming on SAE Tomorrow Today.
Thank you. It was fun. And you need to come visit Southern California. We'll go on a little driving tour.
You have a deal. Deal. Thank you for listening to SAE Tomorrow Today. If you've enjoyed this episode and would like to hear more, please kindly rate, review, and let us know what topics you'd like for us to explore next. Be sure to join us next week as we break down what's changing in the defense and aerospace industries.
SAE International makes no representations as to the accuracy of the information presented in this podcast. The information and opinions are for general information only. SAE International does not endorse, approve, recommend, or certify any information, product, process, service, or organization presented or mentioned in this podcast.